Hello and welcome back to the News Project Live. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on Thursday, July the 2nd. Um, Normally we come to you on Fridays, but tomorrow, as we all know, is a day off, so we figured we'd get the word in early as to what's been going on around the neighborhood here and bring you up to date as best we can on some of the news items you might want to just be aware of as we go into the holiday weekend, which of course will be somewhat different from normal. Not as many fireworks displays as we usually might expect to see, but up in Londonderry, folks have come up with a creative idea to celebrate the Fourth in a somewhat unconventional way. The parade that in the past has been one of the things to look forward to is going to be a lawn float display this year, and that parade route, so-called, will run from the Taylor Farm to the Magic Mountain parking lot. That would be on Route 11 there, going then down on Route 100. The lawn floats will be available for viewing between 12 noon and 3 p.m. on Saturday, July the 4th. So that sounds like that should be a lot of fun. So if you're up that way, it might be kind of cool to check that out. Meanwhile, early voting has begun last Monday on the 29th of June. Um, it's basically the same as you've always known it in the past. You can get an absentee ballot or a mail ballot from your town clerk and to bring that in or mail that in, and your vote will be ready to be counted on August 11th when the state primary will be occurring. So you got plenty of time, but it's going to go by quickly, as we all know. Um, the general election balloting in November may be somewhat different. There's been discussion about whether or not we should have ballots mailed to us. The Secretary of State Jim Condos has been working on a plan to try and expand mail-in balloting in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. Want to try and keep everyone safe who might be either voting or working at the polls. So we'll know more about that next week. We're going to have an interview with Secretary of State Condos next Wednesday, I believe, where he'll tell us a little bit about what some of the plans are. There's been a back and forth between him and the governor's office about how to structure that. But I guess the immediate the immediate news is that absentee balloting will be pretty much the same as before, and of course you can also go to the polls as well on August 11th and cast your vote the traditional way, social distancing and all of that applying. So we'll have more stories on that as we go forward, but that's kind of a big deal this year, of course, with a lot of state offices and of course the presidential election in November coming along. Speaking of elections, our series of interviews with the leading candidates for governor, excuse me, is continuing. Last week we added two more, one with Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman, who is in the running for the Democratic Party's nomination for governor. And we also just taped one with John Clark, who is running for the Republican Party's nomination, in opposition to, of course, the incumbent governor, Phil Scott, will also be running for re-election. Um, anyway, moving on, as we reported last week, the no quarantine travel rules to Vermont have been relaxed somewhat. Effective today, people from low-risk counties and additional states can travel to Vermont without having to quarantine. Uh, those counties used to be, I think, about 75 counties, and mostly in upstate New York and New England. That's now been expanded to include counties in Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia, as well as the District of Columbia. So it's not every county in every state that I just mentioned, but many are. So that will be a big boon to the state's very hard hit hospitality and tourism industries. So hopefully folks will be able to come up here and enjoy Vermont, and um, the long journey back to normalcy will maybe take a few more steps. Meanwhile, yesterday, July 1st, the governor's uh, 3 times a week press conference. Uh, the Scott administration laid out the guidelines for business grants that were approved by the legislature as part of a $76 million package in federal emergency aid to Vermont businesses that have been very hard hit by the pandemic and the need to close or curtail operations sharply. They'll be able to apply for up to $50,000 in emergency aid starting on Monday, July 6th. The state's Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the Department of Taxes will also oversee $76 million each in emergency aid to Vermont businesses. Now, businesses that pay rooms and meals or sales and use tax should apply for grants through the tax department. All other businesses and nonprofits should apply through the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And both agencies are hoping to have application portals up and running by the start of next week. And if you have time this afternoon, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development will be hosting a webinar on the application project starting at 3 p.m. this afternoon in a couple of hours. So if you're one of those business folks who think that you might qualify for one of these grants, might be worth tuning into that webinar. Go to their website and you'll have the login information there. Meanwhile, encouraging news on Vermont's COVID-19 situation. We have been listed as one of the 4 top states in the country in terms of handling and subduing the coronavirus. Expanded public testing has played a big role in that. So is mask wearing. The other 3 states, in case you're interested, are Alaska, Montana, and Hawaii. In connection with that, the Southwestern Vermont Medical Center down in Bennington is loosening its visiting guidelines starting next Monday. The SVMC will allow adult hospital inpatients to have 1 visitor and pediatric inpatients to have 2. The 1 visitor policy applies to all inpatients with a couple of exceptions. Patients who may be nearing the end of life will have multiple visitors, up to 2 at a time. Patients who have a disability may have both a family or friend caregiver who may be necessary for their care, plus a visitor. Partners and spouses of expectant and recently delivered mothers are welcome 24 hours a day. Others, including siblings of newborns, may not visit at this time, however. Pediatric inpatients may have up to 2 primary caregivers. We've been also trying to keep you up to date, swinging back up here to the North Shire on the construction work on Route 30. The contractor is currently scheduled not to be on site for the week of July the 6th through next week. Work is scheduled to resume the week starting Monday the 13th of July. So no traffic impacts expected for this coming week, which I'm sure is probably good news for all folks who travel that way with some regularity. Lastly, on a happy note, just want to pass along the word to those of you who may have missed the video that's on GNAT's website at GNAT-TV.org. Griff McClellan was awarded the 2019 Natty Award for Volunteer of the Year for his work hosting the fantastic sports show he did called Sportshire. In the past, we've usually gathered at an area restaurant to celebrate that and have a big party for whoever the winner of the year was. And this year, of course, with the rules being what they are, that wasn't possible to do that. But we did the next best thing we could, and had a little drive-by party at his home in Manchester, and staff members from the station and board members were there to celebrate along with his family. So if you haven't checked out the video yet on the website at GNAT, we invite you to go and do that. All right, well, that'll do it for today, and hope you all are looking forward to a great holiday weekend, a little extra time off maybe, and we'll see you again next week at the regular time on Friday. That would be July the 10th at 1 o'clock. So for today, this is Andrew McKeever, News Director at GNAT. Have a great weekend, everybody, and stay safe.